And we are live. Welcome to Pixel Fondue. We are here with none other than Brad Peebler, Pixel
Hey,
Fondue, co-founder and mysterious man on a mission. And I'm just going to let Brad give his own bio and history for those of you that don't know him or those of you that need to be reminded. Brad, take it away.
thanks, Greg. Sure. Actually, I was going to show up with a big fake David Letterman beard.
Oh God, that would be awesome.
Just ran out of time. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, the reason I was going to roll in with the fake David Letterman beard was I've been out of the public eye for a couple years, almost 2 years now. I used to work with the Moto team. I was one of the co-founders of Luxology with Alan Hastings and Stuart Ferguson.
Oh, you can go back farther than that.
That's true. Back in the day. Okay, let's see. So
the early days, the very first days of 3D, Brad Peebler was involved. If you want to go way back, so go ahead, let us know. Like, give us the early history.
Yeah, I started in tech support, helping to answer questions around Lightwave 3D. Cut my teeth doing a lot of training when we would distribute training videos on VHS tape. So I think a lot of people know me from training, actually. I meet a lot of people out there who still, to this day, remember those old desktop images, videos. Worked my way up from tech support at New Tech. Was there for about 10 years. Had the good fortune of meeting the geniuses Alan Hastings and Stuart Ferguson, who are still to this day very close friends of mine. When I left New Tech 10 years later, I was the vice president of 3D, so I did kind of every possible job under the sun at that, and I'm very grateful for Tim Jennison and the crew at New Tech for affording me that opportunity. I think of it as entrepreneur training because I did everything. It was marketing. I did a little bit of very, very light programming on the early days of the video toaster, helping with some of the video effects. If you remember those old video toaster wipes, I'm actually some of the sports wipes.
The actual model, like throwing the football or whatever.
I was not throwing the football. I don't want anybody to go back and look at that because the person throwing the football did not do a good job of throwing a football.
No. It's probably the actual Kansas quarterback.
But I did coax my friend Kelby to come over and play a different quarterback, and then I'm the one tackling him. So I had the good end of that job.
Yeah, nice. All right. And then
yeah, so then we started. I left New Tech in late 2001. Started Luxology in 2002 with Alan and Stuart. We created Moto. Did that for a long time. Still very near and dear to my heart. I was just using Moto yesterday, actually. So while I haven't, I think again, a lot of people might remember me from those old VHS tapes and DVDs. Some people might remember me from videos online and Luxology.com and the forums. I think we really did a great job of building a community early before there was a Facebook and whatnot.
So Luxology was founded in what, 2002? When did the first version of Moto come out? We'll get through this real quick, but just remind me. I'm just going to see how old I can make you feel.
I think the first version of Moto was 2006, possibly.
2006. Okay, so about 12 years ago or so. I mean, there's probably people using Moto now that weren't even born when you guys formed Luxology.
Yes, I'm sure that is true.
Going with that.
So yeah, so old man of 3D, hence the faux beard I was going to roll in with. But you've got the real one, so I didn't want to be.
Yeah. I don't think you can really dye a beard. It just doesn't work. Just like you get the gray beard, you're stuck with it.
So anyway, about 2 years ago, I disappeared from the face of the earth. And again, maybe people know me from the Modcast. We did that for many, many years, doing modcasting or podcasting before podcasting was cool. We were doing social media before social media was cool. But as many people those who do know me might know that I departed 2 years ago, and a big focus of my life has been this project right here, Heirs to Our Oceans. And this is what I want to talk to people about today. I want to give an update. A lot of people generously donated in the early days when we were getting the program kicked off. And so I thought I could give people kind of a news flash, let people know what I'm up to today, and then
yeah, let's do that. So I see you've got some video up behind you, Heirs to Our Oceans. We're going to let you talk a little bit about that just to give the people watching, sort of a rundown of what you've been doing. It seems like a really exciting project to me, and it's actually 2 years. It's really hard to believe you've been at this for a couple of years.
It's been 2 years, yeah. And the original, the nut of it is this is a group of kids. It's a global movement of kids who are rising up to take agency around issues with the ocean, kind of the ocean crisis, if you will. And the founding heirs, of which there were, I believe, about 12 or 13 from here in the Bay Area. Their mission was to go deep in the sciences of a particular focus area. So we have people focused on plastic pollution, climate change, ocean acidification, deep sea and shallow water corals, marine protected areas, derelict fishing gear. I mean, all across the board, we have all these different categories. And the interesting thing is each one of these kids becomes an expert. And their mandate is it's actually part of their education. So all of their math, their science, their writing is all kind of focused on the ocean crisis, and in particular their specific area of expertise. And then they write papers. Now they're also kept to task. They have to partner with a lead scientist in their field, and anything that the kids write has to be vetted by those scientists. So Greg, I know you've done a lot of work with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and California Academy.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so you've got a group of kids, and what age were they when they started, approximately? This group of kids?
9 to 17 is the range that is currently active, and when they started, they were mostly around 10 to 12 years old.
So really young, grade school, maybe middle school kids getting together, and as part of their education, this core group of kids in the Bay Area are really getting to the hard sciences of these specific areas. And so you mentioned some things like plastic in the ocean or ocean acidification, which affects coral reefs. These are all things, incidentally, I've done animations for the Monterey Bay Aquarium over the years. So it's really interesting to me, and it's great that these kids are getting involved in this. But you've really, like you said earlier, it's a global movement now. So you've been able to expand this from the Bay Area outwards, and sort of this core group of kids who have access to things like scientists who work at the Monterey Bay Aquarium or Cal Academy or Imbari, I'm sure as well, the scientific arm down there in Monterey. And you're able to expand this small, almost like a startup, into a global movement. Have you used your experience in 3D and sort of working with small companies into marketing this and making connections and talking to people and getting the word out? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. My involvement, I like to say I'm mostly tech support, back to my roots.
Tech support.
The real driving forces here are the kids, and then the executive director of Heirs to Our Oceans, who happens to also be my wife, April Peebler. But yeah, I have actually done quite a bit of 3D in support of the program. Using Modo, early on we did a little VR piece. It was more of a stereoscopic 360, which we won Best Live Action Documentary at CES 2 years ago. So that was kind of cool.
Oh, really? So that helped to get the word out.
That did, and we've also been working on a feature-length film. So we've been documenting, hence all the footage behind me. I posted on Twitter, I'd received 80 terabytes in a box. If anybody can tell me why my monitor keeps flashing off and on, it's connected to an iMac Pro. You can give me a clue. I'll make that stop.
Well, tech support.
So anyway, so the global movement, let me come back to that. It's really, it's by no credit to me that this has happened. What's happened is we've tapped into an interest worldwide of kids who I think they're looking for something bigger to contribute to. And if you look at what's happened in a darker note with the kids in Parkland, I think kids are realizing that the adults aren't going to fix the problems of the world. We are so mired in our politics. We are so just angry with each other. We can't even have a dialogue about reasonable gun control or about reasonable steps to fix our environment. Everything's politicized. Everything's a battle. So these kids are just rising up and saying, screw it, we'll do it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And seeing kids take initiative, whatever the area may be, but what's really important is, and should be underestimated, is whether it's Parkland or Heirs to Our Oceans or any other area where kids are taking an initiative, there's always adults there providing guidance who have the sort of same goals as them. And looking at your website at Heirs to the Oceans and Heirs to our Oceans and keeping track of I follow like 5 people on Twitter. You're one of them. So I do sort of keep track of what's going on. And aside from the sort of hard science aspect you've talked about earlier, what I see are a lot of pictures of kids directly involved with things you can do on a daily basis, like going to the beach, cleaning up garbage, doing stuff like that. And that's something that you can expand on a larger sort of basis, because not every kid in the world has access to a marine biologist to, learn about the hard science or the sort of learning materials you may have, here in Silicon Valley. So how is that your sort of hook into getting other people involved in this, or is it the educational aspect?
No, you're absolutely right. So where I was going is the core Heirs, they focus on their areas of expertise, and then the Heirs chapters, where we have chapters now in Palau and Micronesia. We have one in Guam. We have one in Southern California, Hawaii. So we're having these one in Pescadero right here in our own backyard. So the chapters, what they do, rather than going deep in the sciences, is they actually focus on a single initiative. So the chapter gets together and says, this is the initiative that we want to focus on. And then they go after something in their own community. So for example, we have 2 chapters in Palau, and both of them went to their schools and lobbied to remove all use of single-use plastics successfully. One of the Palauans actually filed with a senator a bill to pass a plastic bag ban across all of Palau, and it passed.
Wow, so that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. Charlie, my older daughter, went up to the Pacific Marine Fisheries Council in Oregon and lobbied against deep sea trawling based on her knowledge of deep sea corals off the coast of California, which I didn't even know we had. We have coral off of California. I had no idea.
Yeah, actually, again, I actually did an animation about this. Trawling is really damaging to coral. It just tears up basically these really heavy nets that roll along the ocean bottom on tires, basically.
Yeah.
Just annihilate everything it runs over. It annihilates it. So think about plowing a field, but doing that on the bottom of the ocean and destroying everything you run over. And doing it day after day after day, 365, 24/7. And it's pretty brutal. So what you're mentioning here, it's not just education, and it's not just efforts to clean up and be directly involved in improving the environment. There's also political efforts, it sounds like. In some place like Palau, so I don't know anything about Palau. That sounds like a small democratic island. Is that where you can lobby a local official and get something done?
It was occupied by the Japanese in World War II. The Americans liberated them, and then we occupied them for some time. They became a sovereign nation back in the late 90s. And in fact, that's where our connection to them begins. April, my wife, when she was in law school, she signed up for a program and won a spot, and she actually helped Palau write their constitutional law when they were becoming a sovereign country. Oh, wow. So, sovereign nation. So she had deep connections there. Actually, had connections. She hadn't talked to them in many, many years. It'd been 20 years since she'd been there. But when we were scaling up Heirs, April thought it would be really cool to connect the local California Heirs with a sister city, essentially, that shared the Pacific, and with kids that are, so we say, underserved, and also where these ocean impacts are going to be felt the most, right? If you live on an island and the ocean is your main source of protein, if we fish that out, they have no food independence, right? So as the water levels rise, island nations are absolutely going to be the first to be affected. So we went there to connect with them. And that was the first chapter, which brings me to a motivating factor of this what do we call these now? Podcast, videocast, streaming, live streaming events.
Kids today call it live streaming, Brad.
Live streaming. Okay, I'm old. So we last year we hosted a camp called SEAL, which is the Summit for Empowerment, Action, and Leadership. And we had 28 kids from 7 different countries and states, including a handful of kids from the founding Heirs here in California. But then we had kids from Palau, Pohnpei, Chuuk, Guam. I'm missing some others. Who am I forgetting? Anyway, at any rate, Saipan. We had kids from all over Micronesia, from the Federated States of Micronesia. And it was a 10-day camp. I taught how to shoot and edit video with GoPros so they could become citizen scientists or create documentaries. I taught public speaking. The Californian Heirs taught their areas of expertise about the human impact. And then at the camp, they recorded and produced 5 short-form documentaries about 5 different human impacts on the ocean.
So the kids are actually doing the teaching, that their areas of interest. Like
that's right.
The aspects of the ocean that they've studied and put a lot of effort into. They're going to Micronesia. They're interacting with other kids their age. They're sharing that knowledge. And then I assume you're maybe providing some GoPros or something, and they're able to go out and document what's going on and create some video to promote their activities. And it's interesting to me. And I actually linked in the description both to the Heirs to Our Oceans website, also a bit of a trailer you made showcasing the SEAL event. But what's really interesting to me is just what is the interaction between, I mean, let's face it, we've got kids from Silicon Valley going to Micronesia, and it must be really interesting. Like, how are they received by these kids on the other side of the world? It was
something that we worked really, really hard on, and credit to April on this is there's actually a huge social justice component to all of this as well, because it's the underprivileged and the less privileged, compared to those of us who live here in this little bubble, are going to be the ones that are affected by this the most, right? So there is also this phenomenon happening right now where white entitled environmentalists or activists are going around and they're like acting as the savior. Oh, we're going to go in and save those people because they need our help.
Right.
That's a bunch of BS. And so we've made sure to communicate very clearly to the kids that this isn't about us going in and preaching to them. They've had plenty of that from us in terms of missionary efforts and all kinds of things. What they need is just an open dialogue and to be made aware of certain things. But it was not just our kids, lecturing them. They were also talking about. So we had some Palauan kids who have been involved and did presentations, but also those kids know way more about their local natural environment than we could ever. And so they spent a lot of time sharing with us about the plants that you can use. If you get a bug bite, you can chew this leaf and what, stop the itching. If you get sick to your stomach, you take this plant and you boil it, and all kinds of things that, so it was really a beautiful sharing of information, not a, hey, the white people are coming to tell you how to live your life.
Well, yeah, I think if you watch some of the videos you have up there, you'll see like people having fun. They look like great experiences. Also, what is that thing with the pencil and all the strings? Like, what the heck?
That was awesome. So Cambria, who's our plastics expert. Another thing that we have the kids also aside, because you don't want to just sit there and do lectures. And you see some of the kids doing PowerPoints and that sort of thing. That's a part of it, right? That's how we share information. But they also hosted activities. And so to do kind of like team bonding and cooperation, those are really cool one that Cambria came up with. She's, I think at the time, 12 years old at camp. And she, led the whole group of kids in this exercise where it broke them into groups. And you take a Sharpie and you tie strings around and you give each kid a string. So now everybody has to pull tight. And when they all pull tight, the pen sits up like this. And then you put a big piece of butcher paper down on the floor. And then you tell them, okay, you have to write this phrase or you have to draw this picture. And then all the kids have to work coordinated.
I thought that was really cool.
It was really cool. It was a really cool exercise. All the best stuff is always the stuff that's driven by the kids. All the best exercises, all the best presentations. We come back to the notion about getting information from the locals there. I discovered, we prepared a lot of material about marine protected areas, and one of the reasons to go to Palau also is that they have a very large marine protected area, and one of the first shark sanctuaries was cordoned off by their president, Tommy Ramangasel. But we were very, excited about this concept, this Western concept of marine protected areas. And we found out from being there just a very brief amount of time that the Palauans have a long history of something called the bull, which is where a local chief would observe the fishermen coming in. And if they saw if they were fishing in a particular area and they came back and the catch was getting low, the chief would go out with a tall stick and stick it in the reef.
Right.
And that would demark the area that they should not be fishing, effectively creating a marine protected area. And they've been doing this for thousands of years. They've been doing it long before anybody in Western society decided that marine protected areas were a good idea. So those are the kind of things, that's the kind of information sharing, that it really helps our kids to have a more global perspective.
And sustainability is essentially, it's a sort of enlightened self-interest. I mean, it's not like preaching to people like you mentioned. I think that's a real issue I'm sure you have to deal with is going to places like Micronesia with, coming from Silicon Valley and having to fend off criticism when you're really attempting to do something good and putting all your effort into this. I'm sure it's frustrating to have to fend that off when it seems so clear that you're trying to do something.
Well, yeah, I mean, the other thing, Greg, that we, and we're open and honest with the kids in Micronesia that, we can't go pointing fingers when we don't have our own backyard cleaned up, right? I didn't know this until recently, but there are complete communities on the coast right here in Northern California, like Pescadero, where they cannot drink the water. Because it is so polluted from the fertilizers and weed killer, herbicides and pesticides. So there are, and guess who it hits the most, right? It hits the migrant farm workers and their families. They're bringing in, just like Flint, Michigan, they're bringing in bottled water to drink, to cook, and to shower with.
Right.
The local school there, the elementary, the K through 12 school, they don't have potable water in the school, right? And so we think of this as somebody else's, like a developing nation's problem. It's our problem here too. And the amount of wealth that we have consolidated here in the Bay Area and how little of it, when I see Bezos, and I realize he's not Bay Area, but I hear him talking about the only way he can spend all of his money is to buy rockets. Like,
smack
my head.
There's some other ways to spend your money, and there's a certain, there's an environmental attitude that's essentially a not in my backyard sort of attitude. And people typically get involved when something directly affects them. And with the ocean, there is no backyard. So
no, it's the earth. I mean, it's 70, 2/3 of the air that you breathe, for every 10 breaths you take, 7 of them come from the ocean, from marine botanicals, right?
And these problems build on each other. So you just mentioned, even in California, there are places where the drinking water isn't, you can't drink it. And so people bring in plastic bottled water. Where do you think that plastic might wind up, or at least part of it, back in the ocean? And so, these problems compound each other. And what I really like is a sort of like grassroots, it's an honest grassroots effort, and you're going at it through an educational standpoint with kids talking to other kids, because like you said, it's been they're going to be adults before you can blink. Having kids, that, right? And so this happens really quickly. And after a few years, this generation that we're talking about in high school stuff, just a few years, and I blink if you're already an adult, they're going to be in government and in jobs and having an actual impact. And there's just an awareness factor. It's tough to stay on top of things in today's world. And so, like, speaking of that, like, how do you stay in contact with these other chapters? Like, is there like you guys do it through just pure social media? Do these other chapters have access to the type of internet connectivity you do in the Bay Area?
Yeah, the internet there is challenging, particularly in Palau. In some islands, it's better. Palau is allegedly had fiber brought to the island recently, but otherwise, it's all satellite based, so it's not great. But we keep in touch with them through normal channels: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. This is another one of the challenges, right? I set up a nonprofit account with Slack, for example, because I thought, wow, what a great way for the kids to stay in touch. It's a nice private place they can chat, they can video chat, they can share all the emojis they want. Slack has a 16-year-old age limit. So
oh, really?
there's a lot of challenges around, and I get it. I get why companies that are providing communications tools want to cordon that off for adults, but it has been a gating factor. So we're looking at building a forum or some kind of online mechanism that we can control as a part of our web portal. That's all stuff that's in flight. But yeah, I mean, these kids, they're so connected to each other, and if you look at, you and I are both from the Midwest. Yes. I'm from Kansas. You're from Nebraska. Freakishly, we both went to University of Kansas at the same time. Didn't know each other. I love that backstory.
Yep.
We took the kids to Kansas. Took some of the Heirs there, since my family's there, and they gave presentations at the schools. And the message, is that, like you said, it's all one water. What goes in the streams and the rivers makes its way to the ocean. We went and took supplies to Standing Rock because those people are water protectors, and all politics aside, there they are screaming, yelling that this is going to poison us. And we say, no, it's not. We force them out. And then what happens? We spill all kinds of oil in their backyard and in their water. Water is life, It doesn't matter if it's freshwater, saltwater. There is one body of water on this planet.
Yeah, you can't really screw up water. That's just like, if you screw up water, you're in trouble. And then, like I said, there's a bit of enlightened self-interest. And growing up in the Midwest, you don't think about the ocean that much. I'm not even sure. I probably never even saw the ocean until I was about 14 or something, and it's just, you have to be able to get into the heads of everybody on the planet, how important this is. And I think we're getting more information out there. But I think you've got to keep this ball rolling, right? So you've got kids who started off in grade school and middle school. They've put in a lot of effort over the last couple of years, and you've made a lot of connections, but already they're moving into high school. So how do you pass this on to the next group of, grade school, middle school kids who want to get involved? Kids want to get involved. I mean, there are not many kids out there who are like, the oceans, conservation, wildlife, they're all interested in animals and the natural world, and they have like a positive attitude about it to start with. So How do you bring them into this?
So you nailed it earlier when you said these kids are, soon they'll be voting, soon they'll be, in the workforce. Some of them, and we talked to the kids in Palau. Look, Palau is 20,000 people, right? There's a good chance that one of the kids, we have like almost 100 kids in Palau that are involved in the program. There's a good chance the future president of Palau is in the Heirs to Oceans program, right? So we are, if you look at, kind of going back to what we're talking about earlier around, Silicon Valley, the more of these kids that we can bring up as environmentally minded, the better chance we have that some of those kids will become, they may not stay in the environmental field. They may become, I can already tell you, there are kids here that are destined to be entrepreneurs, that are destined to be tech CEOs. I can just, you can tell that's their interest. But if we can help them at an early age to understand that all this is connected. And the other thing that's kind of madness is you look at Apple and Google have been doing recently around moving towards sustainable energy, right?
Right.
They despite the fact that our administration today is sort of losing America's lead in renewable energy, essentially, the corporations are doing it themselves because it makes financial sense. It goes back to that, kind of enlightened self-interest component. You can actually do the right thing and save money. I talked to someone that works at a company where they provide drinks for their staff, and we did the math, and they're spending, for a team of like 500 people, they'll spend like $60,000, $70,000 a year on plastic water bottles. So instead, how about you give everybody a reusable water bottle and install some drink stations for maybe $10,000 to outfit?
Yeah,
and
I'm seeing more of those, by the way.
Yeah,
I was at a high school yesterday, and I saw next to the water fountains, they have a reusable drink station where you fill it up with your bottle. Just the fact that when you're drinking from a fountain, you're only getting about 10% of it, right? It's all going down. Like even at my gym, they have that. Like you just saved whatever by. So yeah, all that stuff matters, and I think honestly, obviously, as adults and you have busy lives, you have to pick your battles. For this to be successful, you need enough people to pick this battle, right? So some people, and there's lots of good causes out there, and some of it is environmental related, and other things are. But you need enough people on board with this particular battle, and this battle has many fronts, right? There's sustainable fishing, there's the plastic problem. There's ocean acidification, which is basically goes hand in hand with basically too much carbon in the ocean. Right, climate change and the ocean absorbs carbon. And unfortunately, like you said, because these ideas have become politicized, it's tough to have a dialogue about it. We actually did. I worked on a climate change project with Monterey Bay Aquarium, and they didn't even call it climate change. It was basically just about carbon. They just wanted it as apolitical as possible. And there was a fair amount of information about how essentially an ocean is a carbon sponge, right? Yeah. So we put a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. It doesn't magically disappear. It goes somewhere. Most of it gets absorbed back into the ocean. And you have an acidification effect that affects corals. Of course, corals are at the bottom of the ecosystem. And, you can have a chain reaction as corals die off, which is what's happening. It's very clearly happening, but even that promoted like a fair amount of backlash against the aquarium, unfortunately, just because it's politicized. It was sort of a stop scaring people. You're scaring people. Okay.
It's scary. It's also fascinating, as someone who is sort of, I think if you're watching this and you're tech minded, you're probably a curious person. If you're into 3D, doing 3D is a lifelong learning adventure. You're constantly having to learn something with every new release, with every new technology. And so I find it just fascinating, the amount of things that I learn. And it's not just about being scared, it's just about being aware. So to your point about, the ocean being a carbon sink and how all these things are connected and how it doesn't have to be politicized. I learned from Dakota, who's studying marine protected areas and keystone species. That's my younger daughter. And you probably know all this as well, but sea otters, who are just amazingly cute little fuzzy fur balls, have more fur in 1 square inch than a dog has on its entire body, which
super dense. Yeah, made good hats.
That was a problem.
Unfortunately for them.
That was a problem. It almost went extinct because they made such good hats. But they eat sea urchins, and sea urchins eat kelp. And so if you remove the sea otters, the urchins take over and they eat all the kelp, and then you have an urchin baron. And kelp is a huge carbon sink, right? And then so one of the things that is endangering sea otters also is red tide, right? You hear about red tide. You say, oh, you can't get in the water right now because of red tide. Well, red tide is just domoic acid, which is happening because of an algae bloom, which happens a lot because guess what? Our fertilizers run off the land into the water, and the fertilizers, phosphates, cause this algae to go crazy. So nice hippie sentiment. You want to save the sea otters, but guess what else happens from domoic acid is it shuts down the crabbing industry, right? So every time there's red tide, it's not safe to pull crabs out of the ocean. So now you've got millions of dollars. California, when they delay the opening of crab season by a week or two, that industry is losing millions of dollars. So you can be a granola Birkenstock wearing hippie and want to do the right thing, for one reason. You can also be an economically minded person who wants to improve California's GDP, and that also means and so finding those alignments, right, and pushing forward on that, and also making people realize it's all connected, right? It's all
that's I like to start big with these types of conversations, and the way I've sort of settled on it is, what kind of future do you want? And I wasn't a huge Star Trek fan, but the Star Trek future was a good future. Yeah. It was a positive future in terms of like people had healthcare, the environmental problems had been fixed, and it was a sort of a, do you want that future or not? Because you can go multiple directions, and that future is not going to just happen. That future has to be made, and in order to be made, you have to put effort into it. And again, we understand you have to pick your battles, and it's tough. Like sometimes, like you get the, knock at your door, and the person with the, whatever, asking for money, and it's hard to pick your battles. But like I said, if you gain enough momentum and get enough people to pick this battle, you'll have some success. And all these fronts, like education and direct activism, like just picking stuff up or recycling or, you know, getting the word out or changing the way your workplace operates. And of course, political action. That's a reality of our world. You have to have some sort of political action. And this is California, for God's sakes. Like, California is world renowned for being progressive in a lot of areas, but we still have massive water problems in California. We have water shortage problems. We have all kinds of problems. And you still see things like, we had a massive drought here for 10 years, and you would still see like the city sprinklers running like at 10 o'clock at night for no reason. You know, it's just like, while they're offering, you know, plans to, you know, desertify your front lawn for a stipend. And then there's still, I mean, so, you know, it's a lot of effort and a lot of work, but without, you know, groups like Heirs for Oceans, that Star Trek future is not going to happen, you know? So it is just critical that, and again, I always think adults aren't getting the sort of credit they deserve, because we talk a little bit about Parkland, and I don't want to talk about, you know, gun control or anything like that, but it was student led, and there were students in there like creating this wave, but there were adults in there helping them. And there were parents of the kids who were killed at every one of those meetings, helping make things happen. For sure. And there are, you know, you and the other group of parents who started this in Silicon Valley. Like, it wouldn't have happened if you guys didn't get on it. So you guys should get a little bit of some credit there as well, I think. Well,
yeah, I mean, we refer to it as the scaffolding, right? We provide the scaffolding, the support mechanisms, and then the kids, you know, they hang their passions off of that. And we have great parents. You know, Kelly in Pescadero, who's the sort of the supporting parent there, and Tarita in Palau, and, you know, Courtney down in Southern California, and, you know, and then just the core heirs, all of those parents have been very, very active in this program. You know, Cambria, who I mentioned earlier, is our plastics expert, and her family actually, you know, they're now, they've gone to the extreme, because what they did was for I think a month, they categorized and measured or weighed every piece of plastic that they put into recycling. Maybe it was like 6 weeks, and then tried to reduce that over and over. You know, just continue to reduce the amount of plastics they're using. It's really, I mean, once you're aware of it, you go to the grocery store and you're like, oh God, everything's in plastic. Yeah. Everything. I can't eat without buying something wrapped in thin films of plastic. But so, you know, Cambria and her family, they've gone to the nines to reduce plastic. I mean, they're even, her dad, Trevor, is like on Sundays making almond milk at home so he doesn't have to buy the Tetra Packs. Because even those are, you know, they kind of give you the illusion of being cardboard, but it's just injected with plastic.
Oh, man, seriously?
And, you know, you look at, so, okay, here, another little.
What about my Star Wars figures? Do I have to get rid of my Star Wars figures?
Those are not single use.
That's right. I think last 40 years. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this. So we have a lot of European viewers in this. There's a lot of European motor users, a lot of Europeans.
And they're banning plastics over there like crazy. I mean, you know, they're I think the UK is about to ban, or Britain is about to ban single-use plastics. Germany has a phenomenal program of recycling, where essentially the company that manufactures the packaging is responsible for dealing with that packaging. You know,
that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
So they have a whole system set up where you go in, and when you put in your recycling, the consumer gets money back, but it reads the barcode of the product that you're recycling, and it knows basically who's responsible for that. And so a lot of these companies, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, you know, they're profiting off of not having, off of somebody else having to clean up their mess.
Right.
They're using the economy of scale of the plastics industry, cranking out all the single-use plastics, and then that's a burden that the consumers have to share. That we as society have to share that burden, and they're getting away with the profits.
Well, that's really interesting. That's an interesting aspect. I should look into that a little bit.
Great question for you, Greg. What percentage of water bottles, recyclable water bottles, do you think actually get recycled?
Oh, this is going to be depressing. I'm going to want to say at least 1 in 4 people throw them in the recycling bin.
So 10% of what gets into the recycling bin actually gets recycled.
Only 10%.
Only 1 in 10. Only 1 of 10 bottle actually gets recycled. And what's happening now is, they go into the landfill, they go into the ocean.
Even if they're in the recycling bin?
Yeah, because what happens is you put it in the recycling bin. First of all, China has stopped taking our plastics, you know, largely. But if you put it in the recycling bin, if it's food contaminated, so if you go to Starbucks, just once in a while, go look at a recycling bin. If it's not purely the stuff that's supposed to be recycled, that entire thing is contaminated and it gets thrown in the landfill. There's a fantastic study I heard on NPR about the dark side of recycling. Because what happens is they did this test where they set up a little drink station at a grocery store, and they had 3 different drinks, and they put out little paper cups or maybe little plastic cups,
right,
to sample with, and they put a trash can underneath it, right? And when they had the trash can there, people would take a plastic cup and they would sip the first drink, and they would use the same plastic cup 3 times and then throw it away. Guess what happens when they put a recycling bin down there?
Oh, they just new cup each time?
Yep. Because people actually, it makes you feel good
to recycle.
You're doing the right thing. You're like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. It actually gives you a little hit of dopamine. So you're actually, we're consuming more plastic because we think it makes us feel good that we're recycling. When recycling is totally ineffective. Recycling is not the solution. Reduce is the solution. So, actually finding something completely different is the real solution.
Right. I wonder if this is getting, I don't think it's too far afield, but if we can, when I saw the Google keynote the other day where they had the AI call for a haircut, and I thought, yeah, right. Brad's holding his head right now. Like, all the money and influence and mental power they have over there, and we have a computer that can make a haircut for you. Obviously, it's going to be used for other things. My thought is, how do you motivate Google, who I think has a lot of people there with a good heart, or Apple, or some other Silicon Valley companies, perhaps Facebook, that are maybe trying to do some good in the world to, look, if it's a matter of picking through recycling bins to pull out uncontaminated plastic, why can't we have an AI-driven robot do that, instead of make a haircut appointment? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Apple announced their new robot that disassembles iPhones, right? And they claim that they're trying to move to a place where they want to get to a place where they are making new products completely from recycled old products.
So cleaning up their mess, sort of like you mentioned with the German.
But what does that also do? So think about this, right? If you're Apple or you're any manufacturer and you say, hey, look, if you're done with that product, if you bring it back and pay a recycling fee, we'll take that off your hands. If they can get efficient enough where they can rebuild the next generation products from the old one, they're basically selling you something. You're paying them to take it back, and then they're using those materials to make the new one to sell that to you. So again, it's the right thing to do, but it's also going to be profitable, right? And I don't want to hit Google with the bad boy stick. They have a lot of people there, like you said, that are trying to do the right thing. They have a great program there, and this is, you mentioned people coming and knocking the door and asking for money. This is the moment where I come and knock on the door and ask for money. Google has a great program called the Week of Giving, where the employees kind of promote the things that they're interested in, right? And there's a website called Benevity, where you can register your nonprofit, and then if you can get the ear of somebody at Google and they promote it, then any $1 for every employee gets matched by the company, right? Okay. Apple supports Benevity, and Heirs to Our Oceans is in Benevity. So if you want to give, you can go to Benevity. You can also go to our website. There's a donate section there. But if you're at a corporation that has a match program, Apple matches 2 to 1. So if you go to Benevity and you're an Apple person through the Apple portal and you donate $500, Heirs to Our Oceans gets $1,500. I mean, it's a huge multiplier, and that's one of the ways that companies. I want to defend corporations a little bit here. The system is kind of set up against them because the
and you have to just to clarify, you have to be an employee of a company involved in the Benevity program. Okay.
Yes, but anybody can go to Benevity and donate. It just doesn't get matched, right? If you're an Apple employee and you donate, Apple will match. If you're a Google employee and you donate through Benevity through the Google portal, Google will match. And Veritas. There are lots of companies that do. So if you work for a big company or even a mid-sized company, check out to see if they have a matching program. Let's see, I can derail my train of thought there. So the ask here is 2 things. One, I've been selling some training on Vimeo, and all the proceeds from that go towards Heirs to Our Oceans. It has been, you know, at $25 a hit, it's been a trickle. Like some months I make a whole $75. I'm just going to unlock that. It's going to be free. I'm giving it away. If I've ever done you a favor, if you don't know me from Adam but you love Moto, if you used to get entertained from the Modcast, if you've learned anything from me, if you just want to do something good for the environment and you're super busy, here's a really easy way to do it. We are trying to raise money for this camp because we scholarship all the kids from Micronesia. All the US kids pay their own way, they pay their full ride. But when you come from a place where the median income is $13,000 a year, you're not going to pay for a $1,500 2-week camp, right? Right. But it is crucial to us, it is critical that we get those kids to the camp. So we're trying to raise, you know, about $30,000 to get those kids to camp. So if this is where I'm begging with hands out, if I've ever done anything, you know, good for you and you want to repay the gesture, please donate to the camp. Every dollar that comes in from any fundraising, from any of the portals, whether it's Benevity or from our website, is going directly to the camp. We've got kids from the Marshall Islands that want to come. We have indigenous folks from New Zealand that want to come. We have some actually two refugees from Africa who live in San Diego who are super passionate about the ocean. We're trying to get them over there. We've got kids again from Chuuk and Saipan and Pohnpei and all, you know, in Palau. They don't have the means to do it. And so, you know, those of us who have the means, this is a really easy way to do something that has an actual impact. Those kids, I can tell you about this girl, Jennifer, in Guam. So last year's camp, a day into camp, all the kids have started to bond. This young girl, Jennifer, shows up and she was a day late. She didn't even know. So there was another kid from Guam was supposed to go. That kid got sick. So they put her in instead. She didn't even know she was coming until the day they put her on the plane. She gets there, has no interest in oceans and ocean conservation, no interest in leadership, and is just a mess. I want to leave. This is not for me. Why am I here? It's not easy getting people on and off the island. So we were working to try and get her a flight home. We couldn't get her a flight for a couple days. When we finally had the flight and we came to her, we said, we have your flight, we're ready to take you home. She said, I changed my mind. And she handed me a letter that she had written to me in April when she thought she was leaving, basically apologizing for failing us and saying straight up, like, honestly, I don't care about ocean animals. I never have. It's not my thing. I'm not a leader. I don't want to be a leader. This camp is not for me. You guys are awesome, but thank you, no thank you. She stuck it out for the camp. She blossomed into one of the most sort of energetic and beautiful characters from the camp, went back to Guam, ran for class president, won, started her own Heirs to Our Oceans chapter, and has done multiple beach cleanups and is inspiring kids across Guam. And that's the, you know, I know it's easy to think, well, I'll give to some other larger organization. It's these grassroots things. It's the individuals like that, you know, yes, $1,500 might feel like a lot to send a kid to a 2-week camp. But what we're creating from that one kid is 10 more kids that's going to be enlightened and go and make a difference, not just for themselves, but for their family. And again, it's you know, I was talking to one of the kids from Pescadero, and she's, you know, her name is Shay, and she gave this really impassioned speech. She is apparently a white kid. Like, you see her, she looks like, you know, your traditional white Silicon Valley kid, but she lives right there. Her mom is first generation American from Mexico. Her dad is white. But, you know, she gave me this just amazing, so her focus area is social justice, because she's like, it's not lost on me. This is a 13-year-old kid who is wise beyond her years, who's saying, it is not lost on me that the majority of my community, where we have tainted water, where we can't get potable water at our homes or in our school, is majority people of color, right? The white environmentalists who go around saying you can't use single-use plastics, you can't, you know, these plastics, the companies are targeting underprivileged, right? Because if you want cheap food, you need it packaged that won't spoil, right? Because that's all you can afford. Your only option is to buy it in single-use plastics. So even if they want to do the right thing, they're financially bound, where they really can't. And so we're really trying to empower kids of all socioeconomic levels. We're trying to have them, mixed and matched so that the privileged kids can understand more of what the rest of the world is suffering, and hopefully raise a set of humans that will do the right thing. And I'm hoping that there are enough people listening who will want to join in and help us on that cause.
So we'll put links, obviously, in the description where you can donate. Also, Benevity, we'll put some links there. If you happen to work at a large company that supports that, that sounds like the great route to go. And so look into that. We'll also put some more information up on the Pixel Fondue website. And I think what Brad is saying is, and look, Moto community has been a small, tight community. It's really has been that way for years, even though things have, whoops, I'm getting out of focus here. Things have changed over the years, but like Brad said, I always kind of feel like it's like with William Vaughn's videos or something like that. These free, you pick up these things over the years, and it's like if you feel like you ever wanted to buy Brad a drink or buy him a coffee or whatever, this is what he's asking for.
This is the way to do it.
So this is the way to do it. And there's a network effect, like
it's a 501c3. It's tax deductible. I mean, you can, if you, I don't want to get political here, but nobody likes to pay taxes. Nobody is like, woohoo, I'm writing a check to the IRS. This is my best day ever, right?
Right.
This is a way for you, if you are a libertarian and you're like, I want to control my money. If you are a conservative Republican, you also want lower taxes. If you're a Democrat and you want to do good things for people, right? Or you're a bleeding heart lefty. All of these people, there's one thing that unites you. You can donate to a cause like this, and if you're a Republican or a libertarian, you're controlling your money. You're paying less taxes because you won't get taxed on it. Now, this is only for U.S. citizens, of course. This is a U.S. nonprofit, but there's no way to lose here, right?
Right.
You save money. You can do me a solid if I've ever done you a solid. Also, even if you don't want to donate to Heirs to Oceans, I wanted to say one other thing about Benevity, or at least what I know of the Apple portal with Benevity. I'm sure other corporations do it as well. Apple will actually pay an organization $20 for every hour you work with that organization. So if you're an Apple employee and you go and you work at a soup kitchen that's registered through, it's a registered nonprofit, registered through the Benevity portal, and you work 10 hours, Apple will then pay that soup kitchen $200 for your time. So there's all kinds of ways that you can actually take action and get the corporations. And what I was started to say earlier about, the system being set up against these corporations. If you're someone like Tim Cook, you are legally bound that your first agenda has to be making money for your shareholders.
Correct.
Right? So you have to prove that everything you're doing is going to improve profits. So, and Apple, I've watched them in the news. They do periodically, if there's, if there's a hurricane effort, they'll donate $1 million here, $1 million there. And I'm sure they can, fly that under the radar in terms of it's good PR or whatever. But one of the ways they can give back is through their employees giving and then them matching.
Yeah, I've never heard of Benevity. It sounds like an awesome program, especially if they've got some big corporations signed up. There's a lot of people working. There's 50,000 employees or something at Apple or Google, Facebook. These companies have a huge amounts of employees and matching money. That sounds awesome. So if you work in one of those companies, absolutely. So if you log in, you look up Heirs to Oceans, and it's going to be in a registry somewhere.
Yeah, the official nonprofit organization is Viasenti, Viasenti, but it's also doing DBA, which is doing business as Heirs to Oceans. So if you go to Benevity and you look up either Viasenti or Heirs to Oceans, you'll find it. Just don't be surprised when you get to the Heirs to Oceans page, it's going to say Viasenti, because that's the legal. The reason it's set up is probably too much inside baseball, but the reason Viasenti is set up as a standalone unit is that Heirs to Oceans was intended to be one program that Viasenti would support. Right now, it is the only program that Viasenti supports.
So you had mentioned like this network effect with some of this younger kids who had come to the program and got inspired and went back home and created things. And the reason I brought up Europe earlier is not just because we have a lot of Europeans who are watching this, but I didn't hear you mention any European countries where there was a chapter of Heirs to Our Ocean. So I'm thinking if there's somebody from Portugal or Spain or England or Ireland or someplace or Germany, whatever. It could be landlocked that are interested in setting up a chapter over there. Like, how do they get in contact with you? Or
yeah, they can go to the website. I'll be complete transparency. We actually are kind of throttling the growth intentionally right now. We really need to. There's multiple prongs to the program. Clearly, you can kind of tell. There's the camp effort, which is our most sort of direct action that we want to be focused on right now. Over time, we would like to do multiple camps. We'd like to do one here in California where we can get kids in from Oakland or Pescadero or other underserved areas. We're talking about maybe one in Cuba. We're also working on the feature film that I mentioned earlier, which is a way for us to scale up. And then there's also an education reform component where we're looking at potentially in the future starting some Heirs to Our Ocean schools to have some science-based schools around the world. The big gating factor for us right now is funding and staffing. It's effectively just being run by the kids, April, and the good graces of some of the parents that help. We're not at a place. It's very difficult for nonprofits to raise enough funds to actually scale to a global thing, especially related to kids, because there's all kinds of insurance concerns, blah blah blah.
Right.
But yes, if you are interested, we have a whole. There's a document on the website that's how to live like an heir. So if you want to be involved and contribute in the same way that the official heirs do, you can do that. And then you can reach out, contact us, info@heirstoouroceans.com if you're interested. And we've been sending people information about, what it would mean to start a chapter. And then we're hoping to have something more official to allow people to do that this year.
Okay. There was a couple questions over here on the side that are actually environmentally related. Somebody had mentioned the CBN Project, which looks like, I just did a quick Google search for it. Looks like a ocean plastic cleanup project. I know there was one that actually Moto was involved in. There's a Moto animator. I think it was just called the Ocean Cleanup Project, where they had these sort of.
Oh, is that Boyan's Flat?
I think so, like the Norwegian or like something like that.
Yeah, I think he's from the Netherlands, maybe, but
Netherlands. Okay,
one of those N places.
They get all sensitive about that,
I know. I just don't remember which one. I thought he was
Swedish. I
thought he was anyway. But his name is Boyan Slat. Here's the so couple things. He was like 16 or something when he came up with this idea, right? And then he pitched this idea because he was thinking about the gyres. If you've seen the gyres, it's the way the water flows and it's collecting these huge masses of plastic. And he had this idea, which on the surface is genius, which is if it's the movement of the water that's causing all the plastic to collect, if you put a filter there, basically the gyre will force and it'll just, that's how you would clean it up.
Right.
There are multiple. So he has raised millions and millions of dollars. They have their own reconnaissance jet. Our kids went and interviewed him when they landed at Moffett Field here. Okay. There are, I applaud the effort. There are a lot of questions around what happens to the sea life that are surface, the eggs and things on your filtering system isn't going to determine the difference between a microplastic and a fish egg. But more importantly, just like the water cups at the store and the recycle bin, the psychological effect of this is that humans. It's what's called the Superman effect. People are always looking for someone else to come in and save the day. And so they think, I don't need to change my actions because someone's going to figure this out.
Somebody will figure it out, yeah.
That's right. And so, sure, if Boyan's program was 100% effective, that would clean it up. But if we keep dumping hundreds of millions of tons of plastic into the ocean every year, it's going to continue to be a problem. And as that plastic breaks down into microplastics, it gets so small that they're finding it in phytoplankton now, which means you know about bioaccumulation, right? So phytoplankton gets some poison, and then the next fish up eats tons of phytoplankton. That consolidates a bunch of that, and then up the chain until eventually it becomes toxic for things like seals. They suffer. They deal with this at the Marine Mammal Center all the time.
Or people.
Or people.
Light and self-interest. Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
like plastic. Just there's nothing on the planet as of yet. I know there's been some synthetic organisms they're working on that eats plastic. Plastic just isn't. Basically, the sun just breaks it down into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller pieces until it's just a few molecules being absorbed by even just phytoplankton. And then, of course, those all get congregated back up the food chain when something eats something else. A jellyfish gets eaten by a sea turtle. A jellyfish has been soaking this stuff up for years, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's a huge problem. And yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, it's similar to fossil fuels. It's like, we will run out of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
That is absolutely 100% going to happen. But there is definitely, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. There's that sort of somebody will figure it out aspect. And whereas right now you can actually just go buy an electric car and start doing it or whatever. But so yeah, somebody had brought that up and mentioned it. There was another one, the CBN Project. So, again, like picking your battles, these things help, but
they do help. It's important. I don't mean to, and I don't mean to poo-poo any of those activities. These are all important.
Yeah.
But it's also important to keep the dialogue open about, cleaning it up is super important. And even if we stopped all plastic use today, we would still need those programs to go and remove what's in the environment.
Yes.
But we have to do both, right?
We have to do both. Yeah. Somebody else had asked about if you're involved with anything with looking for it, essentially a Save the Whales project. But if you're involved with anything specifically,
some of our kids are
whale hunting. Yeah. Okay.
So yes, there's whale hunting. There's also what happens at the Cove in Japan with the dolphins there.
Yeah,
there's also
a great movie on that.
called The Cove. I recommend you don't watch that. It is so depressing. No, you should watch it. So Charlie, my older daughter, aside from doing corals, she's also our whale disentanglement expert. Talk about saving the whales. Yeah, it'd be great if we stopped hunting them, but also a big risk to whales is entanglement. So we throw these crab pots, just by the mile, right? Miles and miles of these crab pots that are tied together with this rope. And guess what the rope's made out of, Greg?
Plastic?
Yes. And then there's a thing called ghost fishing where crab pots, they break free, they break off, or the fisherman just can't get it stuck, so they just cut it off and leave it. And then it sits there and catches all kinds of unintended things. And a lot of it ends up wrapped around or inside of whales. So actually, derelict fishing gear is a big challenge for the plastics problem.
Yeah, I did an animation a few years ago on sustainable fishing, and you have to realize some of these fishing nets, these deep ocean trawlers, essentially, they have a fishing net the size of 5 football fields.
Yeah.
5 football fields.
Yeah.
And those things break free. The plastic breaks down eventually with the sun over a course of 100 years or whatever, but it's just floating around out there. 5 football fields worth of a net, just catching stuff, killing stuff day after day after day. It is depressing. And I think sometimes I feel a little bit like I have a Game of Thrones analogy for you Game of Thrones watchers. So there's all these like sort of machinations going on in Game of Thrones, people like vying for power and fighting their little battles and things like that. All the while, there's this massive army of the undead at the wall. None of that little stuff really matters if those guys come pouring over the wall. And while it is, little battles absolutely matter, but we do have to fight the bigger battles, which is ocean acidification, plastics in the oceans, contamination of fresh water and salt water through fertilizers running off, things like that. Some really, really big issues. And, it is different than saving the sea otters or saving the whales. But, those guys, they're all done for anyway if we don't get some of this other stuff taken care of. I think where again, it gets politicized, and just like in the gun control debate where, the hardcore right will say, well, you're trying to take all of our guns. You're trying to come into our house and take all our guns. And then, and maybe some people on the far left are saying, yeah, we should come and take all your guns. And then there are people that will say, how about we just have reasonable gun control? How about you just have to, the same level that you'd have to have a car, right? Yeah. So the same thing happens in environmentalism.
You know, you talk about these 5 football field nets, and some person might hear us saying, "Oh, well, you're just telling me I can't eat seafood, and I love seafood." I'm not saying that at all. Just be aware of where your seafood comes from, right?
Yeah.
If you mentioned the SEAL camp, the Air Store Oceans camp video, and we'll get that posted, or you already did. You'll see a kid on there spearfishing. We take the kids out fishing, right? It's not like we're saying don't eat fish. They have to eat fish. That's their source of protein. But if you catch single line, you know, spearfish, if you're lucky enough to live near the ocean, go and find your local fisherman that's actually, you know, going out and fishing responsibly. It's the same problem we have with farming, right? Where we industrialized farming, we made it into such a huge industry, and you hear people talking about moving back to locally grown, locally sourced. That's the thing to do. You can find it now. I'm not telling you not to eat fish or not to eat crabs. Just find the right source. What you don't want is to be contributing to these. I mean, if you start to look at, I think it was Mission Blue. If you look at that film, it's on Netflix. Sylvia Earle's film. And, you know, they show basically it looks like giant vacuum cleaners of the ocean just spewing out, you know, tons of fish. You're going to catch some stuff you didn't mean to catch when you do that.
Yeah, you think like it's funny because I would think, like, I talked to some people at the aquarium about this. We're talking about bluefin tuna, which are, you know, really majestic species, and they're endangered. And I think, well, at some point, surely the ocean is so vast, and once the population gets low enough, it's just not profitable to go out and catch these. Well, there's a lot of countries where they're doing
auctions,
factoring fishing, auctions. They're doing this factory fishing that it's not a capitalist society. Right. So it doesn't matter if they catch anything or not. They're going out every day scraping the bottoms off coral reefs anyway.
People are paying, I don't know if you've seen this, but people are paying tens of thousands of dollars for a single bluefin tuna. Right? What's the is it called Superfin? There's a film about bluefin tuna. I didn't know anything about them. As you said, these
coolest animals.
They are amazing.
Yeah.
Like, they have to swim in cold water. They swim so fast, and their muscles are so active. They have to stay in cold water, or their muscles will explode. Yeah. And you think of tuna, I always, because I grew up in Kansas, I think of Charlie the tuna like this. I think of tuna as like a little thing. Yeah. Bluefin tuna are huge. I mean, and they're going like 60 miles an hour. Yeah. It'd be like getting by a Volkswagen.
It's like a car. Yeah,
it is like a car.
Warm-blooded. A story about that, actually, because they have bluefin tuna in a very large tank at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Big ones, like 600 pounds, whatever, like gigantic, like bigger than, you know, whatever, several people. And like a small car, like a smart car, basically, going around. They can go 40, 50 miles an hour. And the Monterey Bay Aquarium is one of I think the only aquarium on the planet to keep a great white shark successfully alive in an aquarium for a while. So they had brought in a juvenile great white, essentially a great white that was caught from fishing, that it just caught in a net, and a boat captain was like, well, I got this little great white, which I do with it. The aquarium would come in. They don't go out and try and catch them. They just sort of rescue them from the nets. And like, all right, we're going to try to put this in the aquarium and see what happens. And I went through 3 or 4 of them. They weren't particularly successful. They're just open water species. They don't like to be in tanks like that. But they did have one great white that did really well. And nobody knows how big great whites get or how fast they grow. And this thing was in this tank, and it's getting bigger and bigger very quickly, and it seems to be thriving. And one day they come in, and it attacked a hammerhead shark and bit it in half and ate it. And they're like, oh, man, we got to get this thing out of there. And like a couple days later, it attacked another shark and killed it and ate it. And the bluefins were starting to get spooked. And you take a, 600-pound fish that goes 60 miles an hour in an aquarium, and while the front of it's very thick glass, the back of it's not. And if that shark scared one of those giant bluefins, it could have gone right through the tank.
Wow.
At full speed, like a car driving through a tank. And so they got in the end, they're getting the shark out of there. I know that was a concern for them. But yeah, bluefins, they're my favorite fish. They're just incredible.
They are absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Well, there's some people are, just jumping in. Some Moto users wanted to thank you for just being a part of Moto for so long and everything you've done for the community. And like Brad said, if you are thanking Brad, like the best way to do it is log into Heirs or Oceans. But,
click on the donate button.
Yeah, click on the donate button. And I want to let you know that you're missed. You're definitely missed.
Well, let's talk technology for a moment. Let's talk about VR, because that was something that happened. There's a group in San Francisco called the Heirs.
Heirs, okay.
The Heirs. You'll love these people. So it's founded by Dr. Erica Woolsey, and it's all women founders. And they do, their mission is to go out, they're a nonprofit, but they go out and they do photogrammetry capture of corals. Because,
of
you know,
okay, cool.
Yeah, because one of the way you know, right now to measure the health of the coral, they go out, you know, scientists go out with measuring tape basically, and they just do a you know, height, width, length, volume. And that's, of course, you look at coral, that's so inaccurate, right?
Yeah.
But if you go out and you take lots of pictures and then you recreate them in 3D and then you do it again, you can actually get, you know, a more accurate volume.
A volume, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Volume, yeah.
But they, so yeah, the Hydrous, Hydrous.
Okay.
So they're making
so like a Hydra is like a juvenile, well, the Hydra form. It's like a yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I don't know if is that where that came from?
Yes. So if you check out the Hydrous, I think it's .org, you'll find it. Anyway, so I mentioned that the Heirs last year at camp did 5 documentaries. Mm-hmm. So in February, I think the Hydrous went over and they're shooting a VR experience about corals, right, to help educate. And they're doing it. They've shot stuff at the California Academy of Sciences, and then they went to Palau, and because I connected with them, or my wife April and I did, and they found out that Charlie was an expert in corals, and then we told them we know a bunch of kids in Palau, so we connected them with the Palauan Heirs, and they one of the Palauan Heirs, this kid Calvin, who's just a fantastic naturalist, and his dad is an avid diver. I should mention most Palauan kids. We'll have to come back to this, but they actually don't get in the water, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Yeah. So Calvin's unique in that regard. But long story short, the Hydrous had this huge underwater stereoscopic 360 VR camera that was just a monster rig that they had on like a 10-foot pole, and they went and they took it diving and they set it up and they captured manta rays coming at it. So they had some test clips, and they showed some of the Palauan kids, some of the kids from camp. And so guess what they say to me? This year at camp, Brad, we want to make a VR movie. So as if it wasn't hard enough to do 5 documentaries, we are going to try and do a VR piece as well. So I don't know if anybody is interested in VR capture. Obviously, I'm a big fan of what the Moto team have been doing on Moto VR. I think that's awesome, and I think Canova is really cool. But captured VR is a lot of fun too. So I picked up this stereoscopic 3D camera called the Vuze, V-U-Z-E, and yeah, V-U-Z-E. It's amazing. I mean, it's not super expensive, and of course, it's not the highest quality in the world, but you get stereoscopic 360 footage from this single camera, and it's like the size of I don't know, it's like, you know, about the dimensions of a tall pancake. It's got 8 cameras built into it. You just hit the record button. It's not waterproof, so the downside is it'll require like a $2,000 housing.
Right.
So I'm not sure how I'm going to manage that. I just won't tell April about that. Like, just don't look at my credit card bill. Right.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
You know, super excited about getting to dabble in some VR capture. And I'd also love, I just don't have the housing for it, but I would love to do some photogrammetry work while we're there. I just won't be able to do it. So
yeah, well, you've always been into photography, so yeah, the photogrammetry coral, I might be able to use some of those.
Well, yeah, I was thinking actually, you know, we should reach out to Hydrous and see, because they probably sell them to you.
Yeah, put them up on Turbo Squid and donate the money to Heirs to Our Oceans.
Well, Hydrous, they're a nonprofit as well, so they are as well. Let them keep it.
Oh wow, okay. Well,
that's the interesting thing about the nonprofit world, right? Is like you were saying earlier about the squabbling of Westeros versus, you know, focusing on the bigger issue.
Right.
You know, one of the big challenges in the nonprofit world is we see this all the time where there's a resource constraint, right? Nobody has funding.
Right.
So you end up with these organizations kind of competing with each other instead of focusing on the bigger problems. We really try to avoid that. So I want to make sure that, you know, the Hydrous is yes. If you'd rather fund the Hydrous, then you should do that.
Should do that.
We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to make a difference. So wherever you feel passionate, that's where you should put your money or your time.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I don't know, Brad, anything else you want to get out, or do you want to like check back in with us in a little bit and see how the camp went, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, so you've got a link there to the camp already. I'm going to be. I will apologize. I know you've linked to the Heirs to Our Oceans website. The website's a little stale, I have to say. It does have a pretty nice teaser on there for the feature film. That's now about a year old, so I watch it. And it's funny to me because my kids look so young. Actually, it's almost 2 years old now. But if you really, like you said, if you really want to see what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, follow Heirs to Our Oceans on Twitter. Friend them on the Facebook page. That's really way more up to date, so you can really see the activity that's happening. We probably should. We've now started to. We're getting ready for March for Our Oceans. That's not our effort, but we're a partner with the Blue Vision Summit folks, David Helvarg and his crew, that have started M4O, which is March for Oceans, June 9th in Washington, D.C. So we're a big part of that. But there will also be local marches, so people can go out, and if you're an ocean advocate, that's something you can do. But definitely check out marchfortheocean.org, I believe, is the link there. So yeah, we've got a lot of video material. So people want to check out. What I'm going to do also is maybe see if I can get a link for the little video that Shay, where she was talking about social justice. I think people should know more about that.
Yeah, is there an Instagram account or something people can subscribe to?
There's also an Instagram account. So we're on Twitter, Facebook. I mean, you can find all those links on the webpage, heirstoorouroceans.com. And I'm Brad at Heirs to Our Oceans. So if someone wants to say hi or ask a question, they can do that. I'm also, of course, still Brad at Pixel Fondue. But if you want to reach out and say hello, I'm always more than happy to chat. Can answer questions, and if you feel so inclined, like I said, we really want to get all these kids to camp, and time's kind of short. Camp is mid-June, so we're trying to raise the funds as quickly as possible. And even if you're not in a position to donate, if you know someone who is, or you have a friend that works at Google or Facebook or Apple or some other company that has a matching program, go put the good word in for us. This, to be honest, this is kind of what launched Moto. We launched Moto word of mouth. We weren't a big company that had the marketing resources of some of our competitors. It was, doing a solid for one person, doing really good customer service and making a good product. And then that flowed along. And I always said our best sales force was our user base. And so, if you feel inclined to help, but you're not financially able to do it, just go put out a good word. If you know somebody who's, supportive or interested in ocean activism, send them our link and say, hey, here's a group of kids that are trying to do the right thing. You should be aware. And even if that person doesn't give, but they share the link, right? Just help us get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, pick your battles. This is a battle worth picking. At least, even if it's just a one-off, like get the, help them continue to keep the ball rolling. I think it's great that you devoted it the last couple of years of your life to this. It's not, it's a big thing to do, right? You're sort of the middle of your life. You've got your kids, and you sort of go off on this route. And you and your wife have obviously, and your two kids have developed, put a huge amount of time and effort into this. And you've clearly learned a lot on the way. Like a kid growing up in Kansas and then being involved in the tech industry, it's not necessarily, guaranteed you're going to wind up as an ocean activist, and particularly in the way you're doing it and starting your own organization and everything else. So I really applaud you for that. I think it's great. And I will be making a donation. And so I really think if you're a fan of Pixel Fondue or Moto or know Brad from the past and want to just say thank you or be involved, or you think this is a good cause worthy of being donating to, then let's do it. Let's put some money towards it.
Also, if anybody's interested, if you've got motion graphics chops or animation skills, as we push forward, we're moving into we'd like to, I don't know if you can see my giant RAID array back here. Shout out to the Promise, was it Pegasus?
I've got one of those.
Yeah, it's awesome. I got 48 terabytes right there cranking away. I'm not going to be doing the editing of the film. We're working with a proper, editorial crew. We think the final footage acquisition will probably happen around this camp. It'll be like the sort of pinnacle of the thing. But we would, the kids have. If you take a look at the trailer on the website, it's about 12 minutes, and I find it funny now that I have to say I know that seems like a long time to watch 12 minutes of video, but it's what at least get at the halfway point, it really picks up. And one of the things the kids want to do is not a traditional documentary. They want to mix in kind of interstitials and fun things. They've got, this idea of a spoof on Ghostbusters called Plastic Busters, which could be really funny. So we're probably going to need some visual effects. We're probably going to need some animation, some motion graphics. So if that's something that you think, hey, in the future, I'm not necessarily going to throw money at you, but I'd give you some time or some of my talent or a reduced rate. That's something we would love to have. And again, if you are, if you're in the States, you can make it an in-kind donation, that kind of thing. That'd be great. Just hit me up, brad@airstoreoceans.com. There are lots of ways to contribute if you are so inclined.
All right. You heard it from him. I think we're going to wrap this one up. And it was just like to say, it was great to hear from you again, Brad. I know this was all Heirs to Our Oceans talk, and maybe we can do some more tech and moto stuff at another time. We'll check back in after the camp maybe and see how things are going. And yeah, I think that's about it. Happy Sunday. I'm off to a basketball game with my kid. I don't know what you're doing. Editing.
I'm back to work. Actually, the Charlie and Dakota are working on their presentations for camp, their classes. So I'm going to be helping them getting their keynotes ready. And I'm going to start working on, I'm again teaching video and public speaking, and this time probably some VR techniques, and technology. So I need to start working on my sessions as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, Brad, nice seeing you again, and we will check back in with you another time. And thanks for watching, everybody over in the Pixel Fondue world. And we will get another live stream up shortly.
It was really hard for me not to open this by saying, "Hey, everybody, this is Brad Peebler from Luxology. Welcome to Modcast." It's really hard not to do that.
People miss it. It's still being talked about.
I have to say, I think Shane and Greg Brown. It's really been a pleasure watching Greg rise up and take the reins on getting out there and spreading the word. So I think the crew over there is doing a great job.
Absolutely, yeah. Moto community is still my favorite online community. I think it's the best.
Props to Jason, by the way. Jason Linhart still just slogging it out over there on the website side. Just trying to build a house for everybody. I think it goes unsung oftentimes, but he really works his butt off.
He's been doing that from the original,
beginning.
The beginning. Yeah, he's the guy the website. Yeah,
but it was Luxology.net. Yeah, one time we'll have to have we can have a whole hour-long retrospective on Luxology and Foundry and the Moto community, and it's been a lot of fun watching it happen. And as hard as it was for me to leave, working on Heirs to Our Oceans, of course, has been very validating, but it's also been really exciting to watch the moto community continue to grow without me. It's like having your kid go off to college and then get a job and not being the one that's responsible for them anymore, but being proud of watching them grow up. So watching the product grow up, watching the community continue to grow, watching the team expand and become something that is different but similar. It's really been a cool experience, and I'm really grateful to everyone who has paid for a copy of Moto over the years and helped fund its development. There's a great group of people working on it. I think sometimes I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a moment. I know you need to go to a basketball game, so I'll make this short. But I think people, begrudge paying for software sometimes. They feel like they're paying money to a corporation, but you're keeping people employed. You're keeping a really good group of people employed, working on something that they really care about. And you can hear it in Greg Brown's voice. You can see it in the product. A lot of talented, smart people working really hard. And when you pay for your license or your subscriction, that's what you're supporting. So
absolutely, yeah. And they do work hard.
They work really hard. That's a hard space.
It is. I do not. I would not want to be one of those guys. That would be tough. All right. So
the focus means it's time to be done. That's what it tells us.
My cameraman is telling me it's time to go. All right. The music is playing. All right, Brad, take care. I will catch up with you later. Pixel Fondue peoples will take care. Catch up with you later. Have a good weekend, and we will see you on the internet.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.